Hayam Dukam Anagatam. This is a phrase from the Yoga Sutras that is alluding to all suffering can and should be avoided. What does that mean exactly? Well, first we want to look at the term transform. To transform something is, in the yoga tradition, the ability to master the state of heat or the state of fire. And mastering the state of heat or mastering the state of fire is being able to recognize, what do we want to lead with, form or function? And so to transform something, we want to be able to lean into the function and then lead with function over form. And then suffering. Suffering is the attachment to pleasure and the resistance or the avoidance of pain. The thing is it can be very painful bringing the subconscious to the conscious, but it must be done. For where there is light, darkness naturally disappears. But what is that darkness exactly? Well, from the Yoga Sutras and the study of yoga psychology, we learn about something called coloring of consciousness, or the klesha of consciousness through the Sanskrit term kleshas. There are 5 main afflictions that we're really dealing with at any given time. That is the absolute source of our suffering. The first one being avidya. Avidya is directly like lack of knowledge or ignorance to the knowledge. And what that is meaning is ignorance to the true nature of who we are. The changeless, formless, infinite nature of our beautiful being. And instead, the second klesha, which is ashmita, is identification with the ego. I don't want to villainize the ego. The ego is not a bad thing. It's an incredibly beautiful tool that allows us to express ourselves out into this world. However, when we forget and we identify as the ego, instead of the one that is creating the ego to utilize the ego, we forget who we are and that we think that we are only this body, we think we are only this personality. We begin to think that we are actually the narratives and the beliefs of all other people. That causes us to suffer because it goes directly counter with the deepest truth of who we are. When something goes counter to the truth of who we are, we suffer. The next two are the dynamic duo. At least I call them the dynamic duo, raga and devesha. So raga is the attachment to that which is pleasurable, and devesha is that aversion to that which is uncomfortable, to that which may even feel painful. Huge problem with this, because that pleasure-pain principle often keeps us in this hamster wheel, this proverbial hamster wheel, always thinking that we're getting the prize when really we're just exhausted because we're on the hamster wheel. Even if we get the prize, we're still a hamster on the hamster wheel that's gotten the prize, not in our truest nature and living our truest power. So in order to transform our suffering, we're going to have to take a deep look at those attachments and the things that we're attached to, maybe addictions, certain habits and patterns that are not serving us. We're going to have to look at the things that we find uncomfortable, and we'll have to move closer to it in order to shift its form. Then finally, the 5th coloring is clinging to people, places, things, and also includes fear of death. If there's one thing we know for sure, that there will be an end to this body. And so it's important for us to be able to look at the truth of our reality. Who are we really? Eternal, changeless, formless? What is it that supports us the most? What supports us in expanding the most into living fully in this life? So to transform suffering is to be able to bring to mind where these afflictions are buried in our own way of thinking, the way that we process information, the way that we view the world. And as we start to bring them more to mind, then there are antidotes. There are things that we can begin to practice that will support us in how we become stronger in transforming suffering. And this begins within our own mind. We utilize the physical body and the practices of the movement of body, breath-aligned movements, and how we are in relationship to ourselves and others, and learning the deeper functions of this life experience to organize our internal states of mind. From the highest perspective of our internal state of mind, we want to always be in a state of pure self-awareness, truly aware of where we are in space and time, and what is it that is guiding us? Old projections of the past, maybe someone else's narrative, or are we being guided in the here and now by the truth of who we are? And then we must fully accept ourselves. And from that space of pure acceptance, it's incumbent upon us to be able to master our own nervous system, endocrine system, and the way our systems harmonize and relate to each other, right onto our subtler energetic systems, and that they are harmonized so that we can be in a state of full self-acceptance. And then next, it's very important that we have the ability to notice if we're being led by fear, doubt, shame, guilt, these darker, denser emotions, because we want to develop an active and healthy inner dialogue that is very supportive. So for example, especially in my earlier years of waking up and becoming more aware, I became so clear that shame and guilt tended to rule my inner world. So I developed an inner dialogue that simply went like this: shame and guilt have no place in my mind or in my heart. I didn't have to understand it, but I just knew that I used the power of my inner dialogue. And the power of my inner dialogue over the years allowed me to transform fear, doubt, shame, or guilt. Next, from that organized internal state of mind, I want to be able to affirm and appreciate all the beauty that I am. How can I appreciate the power, love, and light that I am? And then next, I begin to learn very powerful practices, as many of you do in your Rasa Yoga training, and that you will be learning here as well, on how to cultivate this inner sense of expansive power that we call Shakti. It is also the same as enthusiasm. Enthusiasm isn't some cheerleader motivation. In fact, the term comes from enthusios, and it is finding that divine, or accessing or living from functionally the divine expansive nature that we truly are. And then from there, having the ability to be able to take note that we have a thought, and that we have some space between thoughts, when thoughts arise, and how we respond. And then from that space, over time, we learn to think, move, and speak from a much higher, more organized internal state of mind. Thank you so much. Take good care. Namaste.